Hey everyone, it's Natalie. So, one thing about my channel is that I've been using it not only to help others, but to help myself heal. And I always want to be honest on here, but today's been a pretty difficult day for me. And I don't know, for like this past week, I just everything's going so perfect in our lives besides the whole in-law problem. But this whole week, I just had this weird feeling like something bad was gonna happen, or I don't know, just like a weird feeling. And usually those feelings are always right that I have because I'm a very sensitive person. And I just couldn't figure it out. I was coming back from the doctor, literally in the car saying out loud, what is it? What am I missing? What am I missing? Why do I feel like this? So I get to work and immediately I could tell the energy was off in the office. And so I tell my husband, I'm like, I don't know, but I'm having this weird feeling like something bad's gonna happen and I just don't know what it is. Do you have that feeling? And he's like, no. And I'm like, what's wrong with him? I'm trying to figure this stupid light out so I don't look 40 years old because I am almost 40, 37. But I asked him, I said, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. I'm like, all right. And he gets up and he's like, I gotta go do this and that for work. And I'm like, okay. And right before he walked out, he goes, I just wish we could figure this out with my parents. And I go, what does that have anything to do with me having that bad feeling? And he shut the door. He walked out and shut the door. And I'm like, what? So then I texted him. I'm like, remember one thing. You're not upset with me. You're upset with them. So please, let's have a better day. Just stop while you're ahead. And he texts back this. He said, I wish everyone in this situation had a little bit of humanity. He said something like, even after all they've done, they're still my parents and I still want a relationship with them. And that really set me off. I'm like, humanity? You're asking me, the patient person, the caring, kind, and loving, understanding person, to what now? Humanity? I was shocked that he said that to me. So I text him back. And this is give you a little insight of why I'm still very upset. Because in that same, and then he texts again, he goes, this morning when we were talking about your mom, he's like, it reminded me of how my dad grew up on dirt floors in Slovakia. And I go, okay, I get it. And I texted Jared back and I said, you mean the same dirt floor in the horse barn that you had to take a shit in and piss in when we were homeless? So you're asking me to give a shit about your dad when it would have been nice for him to give a shit about us when we were pissing and shitting in a barn. Would have been nice if he cared. Let me say cared. I don't want YouTube to take this video down. Cared when we were standing in a pantry line at a church for stale food, expired food. It would have been nice if he cared that we were homeless for 3 years. It would have been nice of them to care about us. And you're asking me to show some humanity And he texts back, I know they've done all that, Natalie. I know that they've treated me like a piece of dog dookie. And he goes, but they're still my parents. I still love them. And so when it comes to my husband, I have to also kind of see it through his eyes. And I can get that. I can get that he loves his parents. I mean, it's his mother. She raised him and everything. But at the same time, because like, look, I didn't really like grow up in an abusive house or anything. Like my parents were kind of back and forth arguing some of the times because some bull crap, was going on in our lives as a family. And they eventually got divorced when I was in high school. And I can remember like some really crummy things that happened to me, right? And I still love my parents. I still love them. But at the same time, because those crappy things happen, when I'm around them, my boundaries are very strict and I don't put up with a lot of crap from them. Well, my dad's dead. My dad's always been pretty good, but I've had off and on problems with my mom. And I think that's why also it really hurts that my mother-in-law never accepted me, because she knew I grew up in an all-male household when my mom moved out. I'm a middle child of 2 boys. And I think that's also why I went looking for the acceptance I was looking for almost 2 decades before throwing my hands up and saying, forget it. Because I get the question, Natalie, how could you stay in this relationship for 22 years? Like, you were so young, you could have just left. And now that I self-reflect, I see that I was looking for a mother figure. And I think that's why it stings twice as hard for me not to have the mother-in-law that I wanted, because it would have been nice to have that like the mother companionship. And I think that's what really hurts the worst. And what's a double-edged sword is that she knows this. My mother-in-law knows this. I've never told her this, but she knew I didn't grow up with my mom half my life. She knew this. And she used it against me. She saw that vulnerability and she used it against me. That's how evil these narcissists are. Is they see that you're suffering in one area of your life and then they pounce on it. Instead of opening her arms and holding me and caressing me like a daughter. Instead, she went up in arms to fight me. To go ahead, the one black eye I had wasn't good enough. She went ahead and gave me another one. And I think that's why I still have a lot of anger, because, like, I don't think you guys really realize what me and my husband have been through in 22 years. And sometimes I ponder it because I'm like, if we can get through all of that, we can make it through anything. But then, like, I see, like, my husband weakening at the knees when it comes to, oh great, the lawnmower. Sorry if you can't hear this, but weakening at the knees now that he's back in contact with his parents. And I knew this was going to happen. I've been preparing for it. And like I told him in the text, I said, Jared, you just got over your depression. You just accepted the fact that you're not going to have your parents in your life. And here you are, depressed again. Like, why are you beating yourself up so much? Like, why are you doing this to yourself? God, I wish I was on my phone in my video because I would read the text. But I just basically I was really upset because I'm like, why don't you stop caring about your mother and father and start caring more and focusing more of your attention on your nuclear family that you created. She wants to say hi for a minute. Shimma, baby. You're a baby girl. Oh, I love her so much. She's helped me get over my handicapped dog. Tim's a sweetie. And so, I don't know, man. It really kind of got under my skin today. And the reason why I'm trying to be so honest is because I know that you guys are going through this too. I know that if you're no contact and let's say your husband has low contact, there are times where you see him moping around. But that's not because, don't guilt trip yourself into thinking that the reason why he's moping is because of you. That's not it. You're not the problem. And so that's why I was so upset with my husband when he texted me that, because I didn't, like I told him in one of the text, I said, I didn't do this to us. I said, all I've ever wanted from your parents was to be accepted and loved. And I told him, I said, they've been out of our life for over 3 years now. And I said, but do the math. In the last 22 years, how long have they really been in my life? Literally 3 years. Now, they were always like I'd run into them here or there or whatever, but they never let me come over. They would not let me come to my husband's house. I was not invited to any celebration. And then for my husband graduated from university, we all went out to eat after he graduated, and at this really fancy steakhouse. And at the end, they made me pay for my own plate. I'm not even joking. And that happened several times. Matter of fact, my mother-in-law would be like, well, I didn't invite Natalie. I'm not paying for her. And crap like that. So, I don't know. It just it's such a hard position to be in, because you're like, well, I just want to make my husband happy. But at the same time, you're really, really angry, because you're like, how dare you? How dare you approach the situation like it's me? Because that's what they do sometimes, is they will turn around when their parents are acting nice and you're standing your ground, you're putting boundaries up. And then they'll be like, well, see, my mom is acting so nice. Why are you so hostile, Natalie? Why are you acting like this? We could all get along. Well, then when he says something like that, what I do is I say, okay, so in 22 years, how many times have we been in this circus? How many times? How many times did they say they were going to start treating me with respect? How many times did they kick you, my husband, out of the family for not breaking up with me? How many times, Jared? And he knows at least a dozen or more in 22 years. Because in between that dozen or more, we didn't speak to them, or he didn't speak to them for a year straight, 2 years straight, whatever. So literally in and out, discard, Hoover, discard, Hoover. That's a little game they play. And guess what? Me, Natalie, ain't playing that game. You see what I'm saying? And I'll tell you something. I know you probably look at me and you see this pretty girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, and you think, well, she must have lived the best life. She's proper. I've had one of the hardest lives I know. Once my parents got divorced, I lived in the ghetto, yes, the ghetto, in a duplex where Section 8 was housed, where gangs were hanging out on the corner, where 11-year-olds were getting pregnant. That's where I grew up most of my life. Before that, we had a really good house, 2-story, big house. But unfortunately, and I'm not going to get into that, but unfortunately, mental illness was in my household And it basically destroyed it. And I don't blame the person. I don't blame the person, because mental illness, you can't help it. You can't help how you feel or how you are. You can't help it. And at first, like when I was little, I was really mad at this person and everything. But once I got old enough and I researched it and became a life coach and everything, I was like, really felt bad. I really felt bad. But my point is that I have more street smarts, more common sense than my mother-in-law has book smarts. Okay? And I am a very sensitive person. I know it might appear like I have a hard outer shell, but I am a super sensitive person, and I feel people's energies and things like that, which makes me vulnerable to a narcissist. And narcissists love people like you. They love knowing the horrible things that have happened in your life, the traumas that have happened in your life. And then what they do, like my mother-in-law did when I was a teenager, once they found out where I was living and their son was coming over there, they were trying to put a stop to it. She used it up against me that I grew up poor. So this is my point of the story. When my husband talks about how he feels bad about his dad growing up in dirt floors and not having a relationship with him anymore, I think back to when I was living on the ghetto and how they treated me like they were too good for me. So your dad grew up on dirt floors, but he cannot relate to anything that I was going through at that time, and instead belittled me, called me a nobody and a nothing that would never amount to anything because of where I grew up. So it doesn't make me feel bad, because, you know, when you're at the bottom and you come up, you got to remember where you came from. You got to have some empathy for the people that are still on the bottom. And when I was a teenager, I couldn't help my situation. But instead, they looked at it like it was a disadvantage to their son, instead of seeing the potential in the person.